My mic cut out when I thought I was talking to you, and I really hate re-recording things, so I'm just going to let you know what I was saying here. I'm talking about how much detail has gone into this elephant drawing, and also how I realized that instead of my timeline for the drawing allowing 2 more weeks of work, I only have 4 more days. This is kind of a nightmare, but also jet fuel for ADHD. It's helpful to have some adrenaline to really get you to sit down and focus on the mountain ahead of you. Without an intense deadline like this, I usually get swept away with other smaller projects that have a sweet little hit of dopamine waiting for me at the end. But with only 4 days to try and get almost 2 weeks worth of drawing done, I'm dialed in. I think my mic started working again here. I'm going to make a pencil extender in the workshop. Also, this video is sponsored by Squarespace, but I'll tell you more about them later. I shamelessly wore a shirt and vest today just so that I could take it off and shoot a bunch of suggestive scenes. Now, I know most of you are here to see drawing tips and techniques and to hear that sweet ASMR scratchy sound of the pencil. But if you really want to support me, I think it's important that you come with me when I'm blatantly running away from my responsibilities. If you can't stay with me at my worst when I'm bashing things together in the workshop, then you don't deserve me at my best when I'm sitting down quietly like a good little artist. And this is the jig that I made to try and make this thing bigger. The point of using the mandrel is to try and flare open the end of the brass tube a little bit so that it can receive the pencil. At the moment, it's kind of stuck. It doesn't want to go in, so if we can flare that out just a little bit, then we'll be able to put it in quite easily. To stretch the brass collar, I just hit it a couple times with a hammer, but this also really bonds it to the mandrel, and it can become quite a nightmare to try and get it back off again. Watching myself struggle to knock this thing off is a little bit painful, but thank God I managed to find this clamp and decided to take the practical approach and clamp this down. From this point, it just took 1 or 2 hits to loosen it up. It wasn't difficult at all. Oh my God. Oh, yes. To my surprise, the smacking it with a hammer messed up the brass, so it looks a bit gross here. I'm gonna have to sand it down and just try and clean it up a bit. Friction makes things hot, so I burnt my fingers and got a chance to use the extender for its actual purpose for the first time. So attached a little pencil in there and it's good to go. Now there's a bunch of scuff marks and scratches on the brass from hammering it, and I'm just going to use some sandpaper to clean those marks off. So using a coarser grit at first and then moving to a finer grit, eventually just wearing down all those marks until it's nice and smooth, and then we can polish it up with some Brasso. And yeah, it's quite a beautiful finish. This is why I love brass. It wears really beautifully. It's one of those materials that ages in such a lovely way, which is why I love making tools out of brass. It's time to start working on the wooden handle, and for this I'm going to use one of my favorite types of wood. This is wild olive, and it's one of my favorite types of wood. It's got a really, really beautiful grain. I'm going to saw this piece in half so that I can use it on my table saw without killing myself. And there we go. Now I can throw it onto the table saw. In the past, when I've tried to cut through this wood in one go, I feel like I'm straining my little table saw, and it feels like it wants to kick back. So now I just do it in a few passes to make life easier, and it just feels a bit safer. We're getting closer to that dowel shape, so I've got just a little square, like a long square. What do you call a long square? A long cube of wood. We've got a square now, and we're going to choose a section of this with a really nice grain. You can see here this end of the long square has some beautiful grain. In the middle, it's more kind of sapwood and less interesting. So we're going to choose one of these end bits and try and focus on using that for the pencil extender. This is a jig that I made to turn this into a dowel. So these two holes were the ones that we were using for the brass collar holder thing. And then on this side, we have different size dowel cutters. So to make a dowel cutter, drill a hole through some super hard steel, and then magically, if you drill 3 holes next to it, turns into a dowel cutter. That's what science told us. This is what it looks like. So those are our blades. I'm going to just quickly sharpen the point of this so that it can be pushed into that, and hopefully we can do that relatively easily. Okay. Fuck. Well, trying to cut this dowel, the stick ended up breaking. It's probably a sign that I should be doing something else, like getting my drawing done. But it's not like me to abandon a task halfway through, so I'm going to make sure I finish this. It turns out friction makes things hot, so the metal started getting super hot and the wood started smoking. Now all we have to do is make the dowel nice and smooth. So I'm going to start working with some coarser sandpaper, so around 100 grit. And it's, yeah, these motions are very suggestive. But I'm just smoothing out the wood, and then we're going to work with, I think it's like a 320 grit to get it a bit smoother, and then eventually 800 grit to get it really, really nice and smooth. I really like the feel and look of the sanded finish without any like finishing materials or oiling or varnish or anything. There's something really special for me about the tools that I use getting old or tarnishing with time, and especially the wood absorbing the oils from my hand as I work with it. So after a couple of months or years, it actually ends up sealing itself just with the oils from my hand, which I think is quite nice. A little tip with this though, when I'm making the dowel, I had to dip it in water and then sand it again to stop the wood from flaring. Now, as it ages and as it absorbs moisture from the air and from my hands, it's not going to disrupt the grain of the wood, and it's just going to stay nice and smooth and just slowly get a kind of richer tone with time. It's incredible how beautiful a finish you can get just with sanding. It can almost go down to a mirror finish, which is just insane to me. We just need it to fit inside that, which is a bit wonky. Okay, let's take it down a bit more. This dowel is just slightly bent, so I'm trying to find a section of it that's a bit straighter. And now I'm going to take some measurements and see if I can carve out a section for the brass collar to fit on it kind of seamlessly. I want the finished look to be as minimal as possible, just this kind of very simple, straight finish. I spent quite a bit of time aligning this and getting it almost flush. And I'm going to use this jig here to do the final alignment and to epoxy it together. Now I'm just applying some epoxy to the end, and I'm going to very carefully try and squish the brass color onto it without too much squeeze out. This is my little jig to align everything. It's super important to me that the pencil extender is perfectly straight, or as straight as possible. And there's a little hole in there as well so that all the epoxy can just drip out without muddying up the jig. And now we just let that set, and then we can sand it down. And finally we're going to polish it off with some Brasso. And there we go. Now I can finally get back to my drawing, knowing that I can use my pencils even when they get really, really small. This drawing is taking a long time and I'm struggling with it a bit, but I'm really grateful that I can lean into some of the distractions, and hopefully it's enjoyable for you guys to follow me along on these tangents. I know most of you want to see the drawing stuff, and as soon as I'm finished with this drawing, I'll show you a nice big detailed version of the process. If you want to catch that next video, make sure you subscribe. It also helps me sustain this practice. Also, speaking of sustaining the practice, I'm very pleased to have a sponsor for this video, Squarespace. I've been working with them for a couple of years now, and they've played a huge role in my career, not only in sponsoring these videos and helping me maintain this channel, but earlier on in my career, I was looking for a way to showcase my work and make it easy for collectors to find me and get in touch with me. I didn't have time to learn HTML and try and build a beautiful, reliable website. And I felt that Squarespace did all of that effortlessly. I never had to patch or upgrade anything. I could register a domain with them, set up an online store, and most importantly, I could design a portfolio and show my work the way that I wanted to. Also, every time I got stuck, their amazing support team helped me out instantly. So if you're looking at building a website, give Squarespace a try. And if you decide that you love them, use this offer code and get 10% off your first purchase. There we go. I hope you guys enjoyed this little tangent. I really love trying to make simple, reliable tools for my practice, and I hope that this is interesting kind of stuff to follow along with. Thanks again for all the support, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.